Are we live?
We are live. We got 40 participants so far.
All right, well, we are seeing people log on as we speak. Thank you all for joining the first Courageous Conversation of 2023 and my first Courageous Conversation as the new CEO. And I haven't introduced myself yet, but I'm going to wait a few more minutes just to give that courtesy wait for the excuse that we're virtual. Ladies, you all look lovely. Can't wait to share with our participants. We'll give it one more minute and then we will start. All right. Let's go ahead and get started for our first Courageous Conversation of 2023. My name is Sereka Barlow. I am the CEO for Ywca El Paso del Norte region. And I have before you a lovely panel of distinguished women, all wearing their natural crowns. And so let me introduce you to them before we get started. We have Dr. Erika Edwards. Dr. Edwards, if you could just wave, I know they see your name, but Dr. Edwards is an associate professor of Latin American history at UTEP. She received her PhD from Florida International University in Atlantic history with concentrations in Latin America and pre-colonial Atlantic Africa. She's the author of the award-winning book, Hiding in Plain Sight, Black Women, the Law, and the Making of a White Argentine Republic. She teaches courses on the African diaspora, Latin American history, state formation, and Black women's history at the graduate and undergraduate level. Our next panelist is Dr. Bola Adedeji. And I will tell you, Dr. Adedeji is a woman of few words. She is a dentist at Peak Family Dental Office. She is extremely modest. Her bio reads this: she is a mom, a Christian, and a Nigerian. Next, let me introduce, there you go over there. I see you, Dr. Adedeji. Our next panelist is Mrs. Linda Wolfe. She is a nonprofit executive director of the Great Khalid Foundation. Linda spent 23 years in the armed forces, lending her musical talents to lead the military bands and choruses. Her retirement was spurred in 2017, in part by the success of her son, multi-platinum selling global superstar Khalid. And Linda is happy to merge their heart for service with their passion for music. Our next panelist is Karen Dykes, author, speaker, and attorney. Karen went to the University of Texas School of Law, where she was awarded a Doctor of Jurisprudence. Since then, she has been licensed to practice not only in the state of Texas, but in California. And she has taken on a myriad of challenges as an assistant district attorney. And she is working as an associate in a leading regional firm. And let's say last but not least, I had the honor of being on a panel earlier this week with Dionne Mack. And Miss Mack is El Paso's first Black deputy city manager. And she has spent more than 25 years in public service. As a member of the executive leadership team, she is currently overseeing the libraries, parks, museum, cultural affairs, zoo, community, human development, and veterans and military affairs. Ms. Mack began her professional career at Brooklyn Public Library in 1996. And in 2007, she became the first African-American to become the head of a major public library system in New York State. That's a mouthful, and that's a lot of jobs, Ms. Mack. So welcome our panel, everyone. I am so happy to have you. I am so excited to delve into this topic today. Courageous conversations, the Crown Act and the Natural Crown. So I am gonna jump right in. I will tell you, I was on the elevator downtown here in the lovely city of El Paso, and one of our supporters of YWCA said, the Crown Act, is that really a thing? Is it a bill? I said, yes, as a matter of fact, it's up for this 88th legislation. And so my beautiful city of El Paso, let me share with you what the Crown Act is before we get started and tell you a little bit about the legislation. The Crown Act stands for, and it came about in 2019, but it stands for Create a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair. And there are 19 states that have passed the Crown Act. Louisiana and New Mexico are among the few that have passed this law, which ends discrimination against students and employees. And Texas has not yet passed the Crown Act, but it has been introduced as a House bill, and it's House Bill 568, and it is up for vote. And so tonight, we're going to share with you a little bit about this crown that we wear, why it may look different from your appearance, but why it deserves the right to be protected. So you'll get a little bit of insight as we go through our Black History Month. So I will tell you, society and media definitely, as I was growing up, does not have hair that looks like my hair. And I would say, unless I was looking at Jet Magazine or Ebony, it does not look like any of the women here on this panel. And so like many of us here that are sharing our story tonight, we are sharing with you because our beauty was not necessarily esteemed by society as beautiful. And in this now 2023 year, there are a lot of people, and particularly those that are younger, that are proudly wearing their natural crowns and have the right to be protected while doing so. I will tell you, before we get started, we are going to use some language that many of you may have never heard before. Like, for example, the creamy crack. What is the creamy crack? My hairstyle, I'm trying to educate and open you up to awareness. My hairstyle is known as having succumbed to the creamy crack. What does that mean? I have a chemical product that is a cream base that has straightened my hair out of its natural state. And so when you hear of the creamy crack, you have been enlightened. It is now the state of a relaxed hairdo. And you're going to hear things like creamy crack. You may hear the word about a perm or a relaxer. I know my beautician or stylist is likely somewhere back here on one of these calls. So I'm not going to make the novice mistake of calling my relaxer a perm, because any stylist or beautician will tell you that a perm is a curling state where you take hair and you put it in a rod and you permanently allow for it to be curled. And it really doesn't stay permanently, but that is a perm. What women who look like me are often getting are called relaxers. So Dr. Bola, I'm gonna call you Dr. Bola because that's what I know you, but I won't forget the doctor part. Dr. Bola or Dr. Adedeji, can you give a little bit about what a relaxer is before we get going? Because they're gonna hear words like relaxer, they may hear things about braids or locks. And I think our attorney Karen Dykes has braids. If you look, Linda, those look like locks. Are those locks? Those are braids? Okay, so Linda, so here, Karen has braids, Linda has braids. Dr. Edwards has sister locks. And then Dionne Mack has sister locks. And all of those are things that will be covered in House Bill 568. So this is a little bit of show and tell. Okay, Dr. Adedeji, what is a relaxer? And what is the state of the natural hair for brown, Black people like us?
So I'm going to put out a disclaimer. I'm not a beautician. I'm a lay person. So I know to an extent what I'm talking about, not the whole chemical, whatever about it. But Black hair, African-American hair is inherently, the way it comes out, it's coily. For some, more coiled than others. So you have different hair types, 4C, 4B, 3B, in an attempt to try to characterize how coiled it is. Mine, pure African, no dilution, is 4C. Sometimes I say 4D to some of my friends. It's like all the way. When you put in a relaxer is sometimes sodium hydroxide. And there's some, which is lye. That's lye. It's a caustic chemical solution. There are some relaxers that are no lye relaxers, but they all have some form of hydroxide. Whichever it is, lye or no lye relaxer, what it does is it chemically denatures the proteins in the hair and makes it permanently straight. Now, that only happens to what you're applying the chemical to. So when hair grows out, it grows out in its natural state, which most of the time is coily, curly. And then you have to go back for reapplication of the chemical to that part that has grown out. Did I answer the question?
Oh my gosh, I felt like I was in biochem in my junior year of college for that to be the lay term. But yes, you did answer the question. I give you a gold star for being so excellent in that description of the sodium and the lye, the sodium hydroxide and the lye and all of that good stuff. So, okay, you have the terms relaxers, natural coils, the different texture of the coil, you have the braids, you have the locks, all are demonstrated here, and you have me with the creamy crack. So I'm gonna go on to my first question with the panel, and I'm gonna start with our very own attorney, Karen Dykes. Karen, why have you courageously chosen to wear your natural crown?
Oh, wow. The why of it all. Just for the record, I've been natural since 2002. And I grew up in El Paso. And so I was usually the only Black girl in the class. Oftentimes, seemingly one of the handful of Black people in the entire grade level or school. So I grew up with my hair relaxed since before I even knew it to not be relaxed. And when I was in law school, I used to always say, you know what, if anything bad were to ever happen to my hair, if I ever had one of those accidents with the creamy crack where your hair breaks off, then I'm gonna go natural. And I kept saying, well, if this were to happen, and then finally one day I just said to myself, I guess I don't have to wait for a tragedy in order to actually embrace the way the hair grows out of my head. And I just admired the few people that I did see on television that had the glorious afro and that were rocking their curls. And so I embraced it in law school, and I haven't looked back. I haven't looked back, Sereka, and we still can convert you.
I will share for those that are on that I have been natural a few times. One, for the catastrophic, yes, my hair was over processed and it started to fall out and I had a bald spot in the middle. And then the other time it was just, you know what, I felt like it's just G.I. Jane. I'm a soldier. I can't take it anymore. And I don't have time to be fooling with it in the morning. So just shave it off. So that's my story, but it's enough about me. Let's move on. Beautiful Linda Wolfe. Linda, tell me why you have chose to courageously wear your natural crown.
Well, I'm congested a little bit, so I might sound like a tenor.
You
or
sound beautiful.
I didn't have a choice. I felt like I didn't have a choice in the military, being in the military for 24 years. There's certain hairstyles that you just can't have because there's, uniform code of military justice that you have to keep your hair up. So to manage my hair, I had to do the relaxers to be able to put it back in a bun. When I got out in 2017, I didn't want to do that no more. I wanted to wear my hair the way I wanted to wear it because I felt like I was just constricted all those years to have to wear my hair a certain way. And, the chemicals that they put in your hair, the lye, it's not good for you, Sereka. So
Thank
that's
you.
why I felt like when I got out of the military, I had freedom to be who I wanted to be, to look how I wanted to look, and I just chose natural hair.
Thank you for that. I'm going to go on to Dionne, Mack, with those lovely locks that we'll talk about later, how I did want to touch them, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Can you tell me why you courageously have chosen your natural crown?
Sure. I've worn my hair natural more often than not, but in 2020, when we saw the cases emerge, the attacks on our children, looking at the cases in near Houston with DeAndre Arnold and his cousin not being able to graduate and be able to, walk across the stage. My son is the exact same age. His hair is locked. My mom's hair has been locked for 20 years, and that's what he knows. And it just felt like, such an attack on who we are and how we want to move forward in the world. And, as an adult, I'm 50 and I've dealt with so many things that have been related to my hair and my presence, but the attack on our children, and I have a niece that was born that year. She's a beautiful young lady, and you want her to grow up in the world and understand that she is beautiful in any form that she chooses to present was really important for me. So for me, it's somewhat political. It was time. My son asked, he was like, Mom, this is the way you should be standing. Why are you wearing protective styles? And so shortly after the case became, very visible within Texas, I chose to lock my hair. And I really think I really want young people to see that I can be successful, with my locks, that I don't have to change what is healthy for my hair and good for my hair and try to adapt to fit somebody else's standard of beauty.
Now, I know, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing and talking to how the challenge exists without protection of not necessarily being able to be who you are and for it to be accepted. And I know that Dr. Adedeji and Dr. Edwards have ties for being born or family outside of the United States. So Dr. Edwards, can you tell why you've courageously chosen to wear your natural crown?
Well, first of all, thanks again for this opportunity to engage with everyone. It's been wonderful getting to know each and every one of you. In my case, it was an opportunity. 2002, similar to Karen, I guess it was the year. And I was studying abroad and I went to Argentina. And I didn't like having to, I just don't, in general, I don't like to have to do my hair. I like easy, simple things. And so by the time I was in college, I was already, I'd have to get a relaxer, but I really didn't like it. And so I was already thinking about going natural. So when I went and studied abroad in Argentina, I was like, it's been 6 weeks. I don't know nobody. Oh, well. And so I just let it do what it had to do. I was like, why not? And I felt so free and so authentic. When I got back to the US, I straightened it one more time. And I hated the feeling afterwards. And I've been natural ever since.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. And I appreciate that. Argentina is just carefree, huh? We'll talk about that later.
Sereka, can you just for a moment, for those who have no idea, let people know that when you get a relaxer, it often hurts.
So I feel like y'all are trying to make this about me. And
No, I didn't mean to call you out. I'm saying all of us who have historically received the crack of the cream, as you said, we know that it burns. Like if you've seen, that movie of Malcolm X, when he's sitting in the chair and the lie and they can't rinse it out. Like it literally is chemically burning as it happens. And if you have a scratch on your head or any kind of sore, you leave it on too long, like it's actual physical pain that you're enduring, not just sitting in a chair.
that is so well said. You can't brush your edges. You can't have scratched your hair the night before. Any of those things, you will regret it the very next day as you're sitting at that salon chair. So there you are, giving the deep, deep, courageous story of how we suffer, those with the creamy crack. Now, Dr. Adedeji, you were born in Nigeria. And so with you, what made you, or what was your, why did you choose to courageously wear your natural crown?
Well, I was born in Nigeria, and like I said earlier, everybody looks like me. Everybody's going through the same struggles I am. So there's no Crown Act. There's no, there's nothing that sets me apart from everybody. But there is like an unwritten code that if your hair is all sleeked down, either, in braids, whatever, but most of the time, either relaxed, then you're more sophisticated. That was the outlook. You look more sophisticated. And I had to wait until I was done with high school. I was done with high school at the age of 16 until I could get a relaxer. And then I got a relaxer and went straight to college. Now, all the years that I've had relaxers, braids, I've been tender-headed since I was a kid. So nothing was good. Everything hurt. The braids hurt, the relaxer hurt, everything hurt. But I did what I felt I had to do because I wanted to present myself a certain way. I'm a clinician. I wanted to be taken seriously among my peers and especially by my patients, So I felt like, okay, I had to present myself a certain way. But, this blessed thing called age, I got to the age of, I think that was when I turned about 47 or 48. I'm 51 now. And I just decided, it is what it is. You're going to have to deal with it. And once I did that, I was done. I was like, if you don't like how I look, you're going to have to look at somebody else because this is how I look.
Ooh,
and
I like it.
It was that simple. I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore. My hair, apart from my scalp being tender, my hair isn't oh, after all these years isn't that strong. I was losing my edges. My hairline was receding to almost half of my head. I was like, nah, this is for the birds. We're done. And once I was done, yeah.
No,
So,
no. Thank you for that. Now, you did throw in another word that I did not explain, and I know Karen caught it. You said tender-headed, and tender-headed, I see, Justin, is there a question from the audience?
There sure is. I don't know if you want to finish with your tender-headed.
But before we answer this question from the audience, and audience, if you have any questions at any time, please feel free. Justin is here. He will share, he will enter in the chat. We can respond, but this is meant to be interactive. But the word tender-headed was used, and coming from a tender-headed child, because my mother braided my hair so tight. I love her. Mom, you're probably on, and yes, my eyes are not this slanted because they're slanted there because you braided my hair so tight when I was a child. But all this to say, does any of one of our panelists want to describe for the audience what tender-headed is?
I'll go first.
You go. Okay, thank you.
Since I threw it out there, to me, it's simple. Everything hurts. You tug my hair and it hurts. Till today, I even stopped. I cut, one of the other reasons I forgot to throw that in there, why I cut my hair short was because I didn't want to even braid it anymore. Every time I would go get braids because I wanted to look different. The minute they picked the first part to braid it, I would start crying as an adult because it hurt. But if you were going to get a full head of braids, you had to sit there for a minimum of 4 hours and get your whole head picked at one after the other until braids were complete. So you can imagine how, that was for someone who hurt every time that was done.
Wow. Now, Justin, go ahead, and then we're going to talk about this time that it talks about in getting our hair done. So what question do we have from the audience?
Okay, they're piling up. So the first question is, can you speak to the intersection of race and gender with natural hair? Many women have been encouraged to tame their hair, specifically non-white women have been told their hair should be straight.
Repeat that one more time, because you came in a little bit broken. So I want to make sure we've heard it correctly.
Can you speak to the intersection of race and gender with natural hair? Many women have been encouraged to tame their hair, specifically non-white women have been told their hair should be straight. So I guess, can you speak to the intersection of race and gender with natural hair?
I see some heads nodding there. Who wants to take this one, ladies? I saw Dr. and I know I'm picking on you, Bola, but I saw your head nodding the most. And
Yeah.
so before,
Call me Bola though.
go ahead, Bola, and then if anyone else wants to jump in, I want to call on Dr. Erika next.
Well, I'm going to say intersection of race and gender. To an extent, men to an extent. Black men don't have the same issues because a lot of them tend to have short hair. They just go to the barber and get a fresh cut. It's not everybody, but there is a high number of men too who have locks and dreads and stuff like that. They probably go through the same thing, but different. Things are always, I think, different with women. You have to prove yourself more, twice. I think we call it the double tax, something like that. But you have to prove yourself that you know what you're saying, you can do what you said you're doing. But then you also have to appear a certain way. This is why I think it's such a big deal. We have all these fitness programs, weight loss programs, all targeted toward women, because everybody wants to tell you have to fit into a certain stereotype about how women should look and should present themselves. I mean, I've never once bought a loaf of bread and all the slices were the same. I've never. So I'm just saying, we can all be different, we can all be tasty.
Very good. Very well said. Now, Dr. Edwards, Erika, what do you want to add to that?
Well, it's basically building off of what was just said, which is really this notion of taming is also a way to allow, or at least allows or perpetuate, right, this notion of civility, of what we call respectability politics. And ultimately, it stems from these historical ways in which Black women specifically, and some non-white women, have been treated supposedly based off of the fact that they don't look kept. And so in many ways, to straighten your hair, to pull it back, to have some level of professionalization, the notion is that some way, shape, or form, you can then in some way, shape, or form avoid certain levels of discrimination. And so, and I'm speaking from a historical standpoint, and that's why to look more civil and or whitened is ultimately that historical process that's constantly been taking place. And we see that also with, you know, Latinx communities as well that have natural curly hair. And you'll also find that oftentimes that they're told to tame that hair, put it straight, make it themselves also look more professional, more, more levels of femininity also tied to approximations or white appearing like hair. So it's a historical process, and it continues to be also within the Black community. We hear that as well in terms of how straight your hair is or isn't straight determines also levels or questions of class and how you are also perceived even amongst ourselves.
Wow, well said. Does anyone else want to add?
Yeah, I think that we're all speaking from a foundation of knowing that this is a result of colonization. And everywhere the Europeans went all across the world, people of color saw whiteness as something to be attained, right? So that's kind of like the underlying thing that's not necessarily been said, but that we all understand. So when it comes to standards of beauty, as a woman, we're talking about the intersectionality between race and sex, gender. As a woman, we are supposed to be pretty, right? According to the standard of our culture. And so they're also telling us, okay, you need to be pretty in order to be valuable as a woman. And this is what pretty looks like. Here is the Eurocentric ideal of what this is. And for those of us from African descent, whether or not we're straight up African or whether we're African American and we had to take a boat, not by choice on the way, all of us know that at some point, and I'm sure each one of us has a story of when someone at school or someone in the workplace or something, even if it was just the media itself, told us that we were not beautiful enough, right? And hence comes the inventions like the relaxers and like the skin lighteners and like all of these other things to try to help people of color, Black women in particular, attain this Eurocentric ideal of beauty. And so that's kind of like the underlying thing. The idea is that, you know, this is what beauty is, and this is what you need to do in order to attain it. And if you're not in this square, then you're not beautiful.
All right, I'm going to keep it moving because the questions continue to grow. Now, I see a question from the audience that says, will you address the term nappy and how our parents used to force us as a child to get a relaxer? Now, this came from the audience, so I'm very intrigued that there's already almost like another panelist coming from the audience for this group of women. So the term nappy is also very much used like the creamy crack. It's in our vernacular, and some people take their nappiness with pride. There's a movie by Sanaa Lathan called Nappily Ever After on Netflix, and it is definitely an embracement of our natural coils, and the tighter your coil. I know Dr. Adedeji talked about not only having a 4C, but a 4D and maybe an E on how tight it is. the tighter it is, the nappier it is, and the more creamy crack you would need if you were going that route to straighten it. Does anyone else want to talk about that for someone in our audience on the forcing of our kids to be processed?
Well, can I talk about the word nappy?
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, nappy was a negative thing. You know, it was a cuss word that kids would use to degrade other kids. It's not until you embrace your natural that we understand that that's not a negative thing. And but growing up in the 70s and 80s, it was something. If you looked more like darker tone, nappy hair, you know, it was you're undesirable. You know what I'm saying? So I think today, nappy is a beautiful thing because it's a natural thing. It is you, and you embracing you embracing your hair, and not caring about what anybody says. Because I know I've been called nappy. That's fighting words when you were a kid.
I
I've
could have.
had many a scruffle of being called nappy. But today, call me nappy. Nappy is natural. Nappy is beautiful. Nappy is who you are originally.
Thank you for that. That is so well said. Before we go into any other questions, I want to ask a few more questions, Justin. So I will tell you, I spoke about the movie Nappily Ever After. I know that if you go online, I know comedian Chris Rock has talked a lot about our hair and Black women with their hair. Now, it's been said that there's two things that you cannot do when it comes to Black women. And most people on this call may not know this. So one of them is, one, do not touch a Black woman's hair. And two, it's been said that you do not get it wet. Don't splash any water on it. Don't play like you gonna splash any water on it, because it's not funny. Now, I would love for our panelists, because that's a stereotype. Is it true? And if so, tell me why.
Well, I'll jump on again. Do not touch a Black woman's hair. That is fact. That is true. It's not a myth. Don't do it. When you're touching a Black woman's hair, we feel like you're petting us. We're not animals. And you're invading the space. So that's a no-no. Don't do that. As far as wetting the hair, my braids, locks, I can wet this all day. I can run out in the rain. But if you have relaxed hair, or if you have natural hair, when our hair gets wet, it gets poofy. And it takes a long time for us to sit in the mirror and get it the way we wanted to get it. It's not like we can get out the shower and do that and it'd be all good. There's a process to how we present ourselves. And when you wet somebody's hair, especially an African-American hair, you are messing up that process. So do not wet.
Thank you. Now I'm coming to Dionne for this one. Dionne, you want to add to the myth? Is it a myth or is it the truth about our hair? Now we've heard from Linda. What do you say?
I'm absolutely with Linda. I feel that when I am approached and when someone invades my space and chooses to touch me, I see it as a microaggression. I think that when we think about the historical context of Black hair and how it was used as a justification to enslave Africans, calling it wool and likening us to animals, it's a lot that goes into how we think about those things. And when I'm in dialogues and discussions about my hair and hair texture, hygiene, it is an absolutely invasion of my privacy, of my person, and is demoralizing in terms of who I am and where I stand in the world. And so I've had that discussion, you know, with people, and I'm appalled when someone just comes up to me in my space and put their hand in my hair. You know, I don't know where your hand has been. We teach our children to keep their hands to themselves. Why are you touching people, grown people? I'm just trying to understand. So, I feel strongly about them touching themselves.
Oh, I appreciate it. Does anyone else want to add or have a different perspective when it comes to the touching of your hair?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Dr.
Uh,
Adedeji.
This again is, from Nigeria. It wasn't a thing. And I tell you honestly, when I moved to the United States, it wasn't a thing for me. I didn't really care if people touched my hair or not. But in the time that I've been here, which is, I don't know, going on maybe 18 or 20 years, I've come to see that it's not just about me. There's a history that I didn't come with to the United States. I must respect that history. So even if I don't care that you touch my hair, you may think it's okay. I may say it's okay for you to touch my hair. And by extension, you think it's okay to touch Linda's hair or Karen's hair. It's not. So for that reason, I say don't touch my hair either.
Wow.
Because don't mix it up. It's the same, That's just the perspective that I wanted to
I love that insight. No, thank you for sharing that. Does anyone, Dr. Edwards, do you want to share anything on?
I mean, for me, definitely when it comes to the wetness, that's why I'm so blessed to have the natural hair, so I can not be defined by, or limited in many ways, right? I think of us as Black women, and I think of swimming as a sport, and just thinking of how many of us said no or won't go there because of our hair. And so I just think one of the things that I'm grateful for, and I hope we continue to promote, is, in many ways, we are not defined by, or better yet, limited by our hair. And so I encourage, all of us to continue to get the hair wet when we can, or when we feel comfortable doing it. And when it comes to touching the hair, I had a little bit of a different perspective because I lived abroad for so long, and I had to learn in another person's country that proximity and closeness and touching is acceptable, period. And so it was an adjustment. I've been all over Latin America, Mexico, Uruguay, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Argentina, and there is a proximity to being able to have access to touching. And so what I had to finally compromise and settle within was to recognize I was in a different culture. That being said, when I'm here, obviously, which is my home, don't touch my hair. So, but I really had to, I'm saying this for us to understand that there are cultural differences, but that's the way I finally had to feel comfortable with it. Because clearly, if I'm in someone else's culture, I'm not going to sit there and just be completely ignorant and devoid of what is okay for them, mind you, within my own level of safety and comfort. But so, yeah.
No, I appreciate those perspectives for sure. And so I think it's definitely shedding light. It may help protect some people on the panel or in the audience. So just know that it's likely not a good thing. Ask the question, is it okay that I touch your hair, before you're already leaning in? I think it's the leaning in part that I remember Karen talking about. Karen, can you please tell about the Whole Foods?
Oh, look, I will gladly tell this story. I know there's a lot of questions and comments coming up, but this happened to me recently. It was a few months ago. I had my baby in my arms, and just for anyone watching, my hair is tame right now compared to what it normally is. I got these braids, Sereka, before you asked, and my husband was like, "Oh, it's too bad you just got braids," because I'll be rocking some kind of bushy, fro-y thing. And so at this time, I actually had blown it out. So I had the full glorious fro, holding my baby in the line at Whole Foods. And a complete stranger comes up while my arms are occupied and touches my hair. And to your point, Dr. Erika, she starts speaking in Spanish. And I could not, unfortunately, I feel like I should speak Spanish. I don't. I could not properly explain to her why you don't just walk up and touch someone who you don't know without asking permission. And I will say this again, being from here, my whole life, it's like you are a curiosity. And it's often admired, like, oh, you know, I could tell she really liked my hair. Oh, it's so round, it's so fluffy. That's what I kind of gathered from the way she was talking. It's, you know, it's, oh, look at this. It's all this. But the reality is I know that it's different, and I know that I have to be bold in order to present myself in this manner to the world. But that does not mean that I want to be treated as though it's a sideshow or I'm in some sort of a human circus. And even in professional spheres, I saw this question kind of coming up and related to what we're discussing. In professional spheres, it's like, oh, look at how you did your hair today. I love how you always can change your hair. Oh, wow, how do you do this? Can I touch it? This and I mean, even in professional circles. And so I think it's just, it's cool and awesome and wonderful that you admire it. Be a little less enthusiastic and sometimes keep your thoughts to yourself, but absolutely every time keep your hands to yourself.
Well, okay. I think you have cleared up that myth and added the fact with the exclamation point on that. And so I'm going to move on to Miss Mack, because I want to hear from her about, and this is about that pressure that y'all have been really laying very heavy on me, I must say tonight, to come away from the chemical. But have you ever felt the pressure to change your natural hair? And if so, why? And Dr. Mack, or Dr. making you a doctor, just finish and get it. Just go for it. But Ms. Mack, go for it.
Yeah. So when I first was promoted to executive director in New York City, as I said, it was the youngest and also the first, African American to hold that position. It was made clear, what my presence needed to look like. The size I needed to be. I'd lost a lot of weight to fit into the suit that I needed to. My hair needed to be straightened. I went back to having permed hair. And really trying to fit into a mold of what somebody talked about with the straight hair and what they felt that corporate look needed to be. And so that lasted for me for about 3 years. And I'm like, I don't need to be any place in the world that doesn't accept me in the way that I stand. And I realized that even though I did all of those things, you would still get these microaggressions and comments from people about, oh, you're this for a Black girl, you're pretty smart for this, blah, 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 still. And so, we can make all these changes and we try to adapt and we try to fit and we try to make fit into some model, and we still are faced with the same discrimination and prejudices that we still have in these dialogues and conversations about today. And so for me, being in a place where my hair is healthy, for me, it's about you should be able to express yourself in any way you choose. If your hair is what you love and this is what you would like to present yourself as, it should be okay. And we shouldn't have to have a dialogue about natural or chemical or whatever, however you show up. I should love you as a human being and recognize you for the talent that you bring to the table.
That is so well said. It was very well articulated that we are not defined by our hair. It is just us having the freedom of choice to use what was naturally given to us in the way that we desire it. And so I love that. I love that. Is there anyone else who has felt pressured to go from that natural crown that you're wearing to this processed look?
Just really quickly, I ran for office a few years ago, and in so doing, I already knew it in my mind. Oh, I think I need to present myself in a more Eurocentric manner in order to be taken seriously in this realm. But it's interesting that often, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that has experienced this, often older African Americans will feel the need to also tell you that you need to line up with this Eurocentric ideal, right? So I came up with this whole, I shouldn't say my hairdresser, who Linda, we had the same hairdresser, but she came up with this whole look for me to have a little straightened out weave, and it, I looked the part, and an older African-American man told me, I was going to tell you that you needed to change your hair in order to run, but I see someone already told you that you needed to do that. And so it's just, when you're entering into certain realms, even still to this very day, you can still feel that pressure.
Wow. And I imagine that there are many that are listening that have no idea the level of thought that a Black woman has to have in their day-to-day. And it's not that she's being judged by her intelligence or her outcome, but more so she is being prejudged by the way she looks. And so I am so proud of what this panel is sharing, and just, being very candid and giving you an insight that typically we don't share. It's an inner circle kind of conversation. And I'm very proud of this panel for opening up themselves to give you this insight that you are normally not exposed to. Is there anyone else that would like to share about that pressure? Yes, if not, Justin, I'm going to go ahead and let you take one of our questions from the audience before we come in with, go ahead. Do you want to ask one of those questions out there? I see the number keeps increasing.
It does. So let's see.
Let's see.
Some are just more common.
There are a lot of, I do say there are a lot of comments. I'm letting you know there's a lot of chats going on for us on the panel. A lot of us aren't reading it. If you see any question, let me know. I'm going to go ahead and go on to another question then for our panel. So I will tell you there are some things, and we've already talked about the differences that, our hair, and our choice and style on our hair journey, how it's different. What can you share with the audience that may surprise them about your unique hair journey that they may not be aware of? Something, it could be your story, or it can be just being natural in general. I'm gonna go Linda and then Erika. What do you have? What do you have?
I don't know. That's unique.
Now tell me, I know you and Karen have the same hairstylist.
She's amazing, Andrea.
Now tell me, how long does it take for your hair to get done?
Well, I'll tell you, this is unique with me. So when I was in the military, I was in Europe a lot. And just like El Paso, it's kind of hard to find an African-American to do your hair. So you do your own hair, your hair falling out, doing this. And I remember it had to be 2015. And Andre is going to kill me. I had my daughter go to the salon with me. It's like, you know what? I found a gym. This is when they were on post. And I actually wasn't going to Andrea. My daughter was going to Andrea first. And I just kept on saying, I like her hair. I like her hair. I really don't like my hair. I could have did that. But once you go as a Black woman and you find a beautician, especially in the same shop, you can't switch. It's about loyalty. It's about, so this lady was doing my hair and putting perms in my hair and all this, my hair was falling out, but my daughter's hair was just beautiful. So something happened and she wasn't there to do my hair one time and I had to go to Andrea. And once I went to Andrea, I just kept on going to Andrea, like, go ahead and get me in again, go ahead and get me in again. But if that's one thing I could say, loyalty in the same shop or the same hairdresser. And if you are going to a hairdresser and somebody else does your hair and you go back to another hairdresser, that's just a no-go. You'll get cussed out. And, I don't know if that's like that, if it's unique in the African-American experience, but that's my experience.
Wow. You shared about the guilt that you get if you let someone else style your hair. That is a thing. I don't know if that's just unique to us, but you definitely feel bad if
well, I think it is unique to us because a lot of Caucasian, a lot of Spanish, they'll go and get a wash and blow. You can get a wash and blow anywhere, right? But as a Black person, you can't go to another stylist that's in El Paso, you know what I'm saying, and get that same thing. Like you can go and get your hair straightened and all this if you're a Caucasian, but our culture
it's particular. It's particular. I got it.
Am I the only one?
I think also it has to do with how long it takes to get hair done. You're sitting with this person in one sitting, maybe 3 hours at the minimum, so it's like.
You said that's a minimum 3 hours.
Well, yeah.
But then you don't want everybody in your hair either. Like you.
Yes, and then you talk about all kinds of stuff, it becomes really personal.
Exactly.
Them, they know you, they know your family, they know your girl. It's just like all, and then if they got it right, which they asked you when you were done, well, why wouldn't you come back? If they didn't get it right, then you don't go back.
So how many of you have been at the salon longer than 3 hours? Okay, 4 hours. Okay, longer than 5 hours. 6 hours. 7. Okay, I'm gonna start going 10 hours. 10 hours? 10 hours is that the winner? 10 hours for a hairstyle. So that is one thing, audience.
No, I'm sorry. No. I was waiting for you to go.
Oh, you were waiting for me to go up?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so do just tell me, Erika.
Dionne can also
Dr. Edwards.
probably attest to it. To put in sister locks, it was 36 hours. Over a course of 3 days. And a lot of cramping in the neck. Yes.
You said 36 hours.
Yes.
That is the biggest deterrent for me to get a sister lock ever in my life, is to know that I will not ever have the patience to sit 36 hours for a hairstyle. So let me say, Dionne, you are also sister locked. Are you in the realm of more than a day for a hairstyle?
Yes, it was 2 days.
2 days. Well, I think that, wow. Okay. I didn't even know it took that long. So you all taught me something today. Hence is why I have the creamy crack.
But that's just the installation, right? That's just the first time you get it. And then after that, you get to change your whole life, right? With regards to styling.
Wow.
Correct, yeah, that's true. I
Wow.
also wanted to add on a little bit to the community. I think that makes it very unique. And the ability to form relationships with your stylist or even in the salon with other women, and you look forward to that opportunity. And yes, of course, for those that also go to beauticians, I'm sure it's very, that are Caucasian or don't have natural Afro appearing hair, you also have that community too. But especially for me, it was an experience when I was living in Ecuador, and I was at the time volunteering in an orphanage. And at this point, I had already been natural for about a year. And I remember there are 3 Black Afro Ecuadorian girls that clearly looked like Black people from the United States. I want to make that clear. And they had never had natural hair. And so I said, okay. And at the time I had braids. So I just took them out one day and I just came in with my big fro. And I just said, this is beautiful. And they needed to see it, and they never saw, an Afro like live, so to speak. And so I just rocked the Afro for the next 3-4 weeks. And I said, this is it. They need to be able to see. And so that connection, especially in the diaspora, to have that was so crucial and something I still hold dear.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing that. I know we're getting close to wrapping this up, and I see there are still a million comments. Justin, you came on. Was there a question out there from the audience?
There's a couple, I think, pretty good ones. So we'll see. I think now's a good time to see how many we can knock out. If that's all right with you guys.
Go right ahead.
First one is, how do we stop that touching encounter as a group?
Say that one more time.
How do we stop that touching encounter as a group?
There is no Don't Touch the Crown Act. So I don't, there is no movement right now. We are just trying to get the Crown Act passed in Texas. The city of Austin is the only city currently right now in the state of Texas that has some protection for its students and for its employees from being discriminated for their hairstyle. And so I asked, reach out to your representative, reach out to our state senators so that at least we can get the Crown Act so that we can protect our children and those that choose to wear their natural crowns. But I think you're going to have to write another bill to talk about Please Don't Touch My Crown Act. So does anyone want to add to that?
I think it's an individual thing. You teach people how to treat you. Some people don't mind having their hair touched, but if you have a problem with it, you need to speak up.
Well said. That was to the point. That's that soldier coming out in you, Linda. You were like, I'm
I'm
telling
doing
you,
this.
this is the fact. This is how you fix it. Next. Okay. Justin, is there another question?
This one's kind of interesting. Lady says, if you wore your hair bald, and what reactions have you experienced?
I have. Has anyone gone down to less than a half an inch?
I have.
Go, do tell, Miss Mack, do tell.
I just want to add back to the other question, talking about, uniqueness and journey. My hair, throughout my hair journey, has always been about the availability of resources. It took me a long time to find someone who could do my sister locks in El Paso. I actually ended up Facebook messaging a deployed soldier who was in Korea to ask if she had a reference for somebody who was here in El Paso who could possibly do my hair. It took me 2 months. And so going through college and not being necessarily in places where we had access to resources, my hairstyle changed often as a result of that. When I was in graduate school, I was just done. I mean, I did 2 masters in 2 years. I did not have time for my hair. I cut it off. And so it was very low. It was very easy. And And it probably was as easy as Sister Locks, but it was all about what I wanted and what I needed and what, I wanted to be able to wear and express. I think it was easier probably because I was on a college campus. And I think that, that acceptance is a little different. I was not in the workplace, but I do think that, we should be able to wear and express ourselves because that's a part of our Black identity, the way that we wear our hair. And so, not that I'll do it again because I really love my Sister Locks, but I love a shortcut.
Ooh, you can have those 36 hours, but 48, let me stand corrected. That was Dr. Edwards with the 36. One more question, Justin, and then we're gonna give this final question to the panel and we're gonna close this courageous conversation up for tonight.
Okay, I like this one. How can women of different races best help Black women and their natural crown in a business space? How, as a leader in an office space, can we help build a better workplace for Black women and their natural crown?
Oh, that's such a thoughtful question. Thank you, whoever shared that. I see a lot of heads that are nodding, and I see the thoughts going. Who wants to go on this one here? Karen, do you want to share anything on this one?
Certainly. The question implied that the person was a leader, right? And so leadership is essentially influence. And so when you hear the snide remarks or people make the comments, then you can lead by helping them to know if it's an inappropriate comment, that's not inappropriate, or simply kind of giving a compliment on the other end of that when they're like, oh, well, I don't know if that's professional. Well, what would make you say that's not professional? We come from different cultures and different backgrounds, and that seems professional to me. Just to have an ally in the room, I think changes everything. And I see some people agreeing with me, so I don't think I'm too far off on that.
Well, does anyone have anything to add?
Yeah, I want to add and just accept people for what they carry, not how they look. What does it take to do the job that you're asking that person to do? Does that person that you're talking about have the chops, even if she doesn't look the part, that the way you think she should look the part? Accept people based on their proven credentials. Can she do or he do what you're asking them to do? I think that's what matters to a job. There's a whole lot of, faking it till you make it and people looking the part and not being the part, So let them be the part.
Well said, well said. Now, I was promised that I would wrap this thing up and be done by 7:15. So what I will do, being a rule follower, I'm a rule follower, as my husband tells me, to a fault. And so I will do that tonight. Here is my last question, women. And with your natural crowns, what would you like to see happen in your lifetime when it comes to children and students and their natural crown? So as we're coming up to the close and we're talking and we're sharing our story about the natural crown and its beauty, and we are bringing awareness that there is actually a need in different arenas to have that freedom to be able to express yourself without being treated differently. What would you like to see when it comes to children? I guess more specifically, it's our children, when it comes to their natural crowns.
Well, I don't ever think that it should be a requirement to cut your hair for sports or cut your hair to graduate, to walk, I think Dr. Bola said it. I think the best is you should be judged by the content of your character and if you can actually do the job. But for these kids, when you see a child with dreads, they've been growing that since 2 or 3, and especially when someone's graduating and you can't walk because you have dreads in your hair, you're cutting that person's identity off. And you can't do a match I know y'all have seen that a wrestler that had to have all of his hair cut off. And he's being pressured by all of these people to do it, peer pressured by all these people to do it. And, I just think that's just so wrong, because that has nothing to do. You want me to tie it up? You want me to do what I need to do so I won't hurt myself? That's different. But cutting your hair, cutting somebody's child's hair without that mother's permission, I think is just off this.
And thank you, Linda, for enlightening on some of the cases that have happened within the state with some of our Black children that just wanted to be kids and not had to have a light shown on them for choosing to wear their natural crown. Dionne, what would you like to see in your lifetime when it comes to children and students and their natural crown?
We would love to see a truly safe and affirming environment for all of our children. Not have our hair, which is a part of our appearance, be policed and used to discount our abilities, and really focus and not limit us in terms of our educational abilities. As we were talking about these cases, in-school suspension because of your hair, stigmatizing our children because of your decision that they don't fit or they're not following a policy that you specifically wrote to ensure that they didn't fit, should not be a conversation we should be having in our times, and unfortunately we are. And so for me, it's about truly being that safe place and that affirming place for our children, so that they can come and develop a world that we're not continuing to have these type of conversations.
Karen.
Yes, I know these are our closing remarks, so I just want to say thank you, Sereka, and to all the powerful ladies. I feel like I'm honored to just be a part of this group. But ultimately, I would love to see a world in which a child inherently knows their worth and knows that because they were created in the image of God, they are beautiful, and not have any of the pressures to conform physically, whether it be wearing a certain brand name or doing their hair a certain way or having a certain nose or a certain body type or any of those sorts of things in order for them to be worthy. I want them to know that they are worthy and to know that they are capable, and they can just concentrate on achieving their highest potential.
Wow. Dr. Edwards, what would you like to share and see in your lifetime when it comes to children and students in their natural crown?
I'll just say homogeneity is boring. And our hair is a form of self-expression. And so being in the college campus, I'm able to see a lot more of that expression as, you're in your 20s and you're trying different things, but it would be great to see that happen at a younger age. And so it's also a call for Black mothers to also lift each other up, help each other out when it comes to embracing and maintaining natural hair for our children. I think that's also a conversation in a community that needs to be built as well. But definitely homogeneity is boring, and we need to have our children feel that they can ultimately provide levels of self-expression, which is ultimately self-love.
And Dr. Adedeji?
Well, what everybody said. It's kind of hard to follow up because everybody was speaking my mind in different ways. I have 2 young girls, 2 teenagers, and I just want them to, what I want for my kids is what I want for all kids. I want them to show up and be accepted for who they are. If you need to do your work better, be told you need to do your work better. Not be not allowed to work because you look a certain way. I in my perfect world, for my kids, they would be accepted, judged, maybe encouraged, even helped along based on what they're able to do, not based on how they look, because how they look is how they came out of my womb. God made it that way. I didn't, they didn't. My nose is the size it is because God made it that way. I didn't get up to say, I want to choose 4D nose. If there is such a thing, you know, my nose is all African. You know, I just like to, you know, I know I make jest, but it's who you are. You didn't make yourself. Just like you didn't make yourself with blonde hair, red head, you know, you may hate all those things and you may be able to color it. There's some things I cannot change about myself. And to be honest, I do not want to change about myself because like Dr. Erika said, it's what makes me me. And I'm happy.
Well said. Well, audience, panel, thank you so much for our first courageous conversation. I know I've learned some things, and I'm sure the audience has. My cell phone has been blowing up because I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from my friends who are texting right now. And so I will say thank you all. There will be a survey being sent out to you all for participating. We'd love to hear back from you, to learn or find out if there's anything that you've learned or would like to share or even suggest for our next courageous conversation. You all have a wonderful evening, and I really, truly appreciate you sharing with us tonight.
Thank you.